going to have to see, further bloodshed, great destruction, all here. We've been waiting now a month for this. It's been slowly progressing with the preparation, the discussions, but I think ultimately the Israelis are going to have to go in and do what they've said they're going to do.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in the Middle East for talks with Arab leaders on a post-war plan for governing and securing Gaza. He's said to be seeking an architecture for lasting peace. But there's no sign of an end to the fighting. Israeli forces have intensified their operation around Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, carrying out a number of airstrikes, and a spokesman said they'd killed 90 gunmen there since Monday. Separately, indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas are continuing to try to bring about a ceasefire and the release of hostages. But there are few signs that a breakthrough is imminent. Well, Colonel Brendan Kearney is a military affairs analyst and former chief of staff for the US Marine Corps forces in Europe. Good evening to you, Colonel Kearney.
Always a pleasure to speak with you, Carol.
Really good to have you with us. Let me ask you first of all about this mission from the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. I think it's his sixth visit to the region since the war began. He's talking to Arab leaders about what could happen in Gaza after the war. But, I mean, it just seems so far off at the moment. Do you think, though, he is right to be looking at some form of long-term solution?
Well, I don't think there's nothing wrong with getting this discussion going because the solution is not going to occur even if hostilities were to, um, you know, uh, end tomorrow. The thing is, this is going to be a highly complex program, yet undefined, that clearly is going to have to involve the Arab world. And that's where I think a lot of the mistakes have been made in the past, where the Arabs have pretty much tried to keep their fingers out of Gaza because it is such an ugly situation. And this is even before the hostilities started. It's almost a narco state with Hamas as a terrorist organization, a criminal organization running the entire place. So I think it's well worth the conversation now. We'll just have to see in the long run whether it will bear fruit.
And I'm reading that there's a suggestion that the Americans would like to see the Palestinian Authority, which of course was replaced by Hamas in Gaza, that it would like to see it back in Gaza in an administrative role. But of course, Israel has made it clear that it thinks that it needs to continue to control all the security there because it's worried that Hamas will just re-emerge unless it retains control over security in Gaza.
Something in Israel has had long experience with the Palestinian Authority. The history of the Palestinian Authority is one of corruption and utter ineffectiveness. That's why Hamas drove them out with violence. I mean, excessive, brutal violence there, well over a decade ago. So it doesn't surprise me that Israel is extremely skeptical about any solution that is going to involve the Palestinian Authority. I mean, their record is just been an unmitigated disaster. So what they're probably hoping for, and I don't know, I can't imagine that Israel sees their entire future being tied into providing security in Gaza, because that also is just, it's a non-starter. It's not going to work over the long term. It may work for a couple months, but then again, they're just going to become targets in those Gaza streets.
Yeah, and in the meantime, of course, the military offensive by the Israelis is continuing. A spokesman saying they'd killed 90 gunmen at and around this Al Shifa hospital in Gaza City, where there's been this huge operation going on, and medical staff still trapped inside the medical facility.
Yeah, yeah. Hamas has no care at all for the innocent civilians, their fellow Palestinians that are seeking refuge there, that are seeking help there, medical care. they could care less. They see the facility as a means to go ahead and get themselves out of the line of fire and conduct hit and run operations from the facility, hoping that the Israelis are not going to come after them. And the Israelis have proven time and time again that they will go ahead when the sanctity of these type of facilities and mosques is violated by Hamas. They will go in and they will root out the gunmen. So, it's just a sad situation that, for the doctors, the dedicated medical personnel, and the innocents that are suffering, those that are either direct casualties of the combat or those that are just suffering medical problems, that they find themselves literally trapped between these two belligerent forces in terms of Hamas and the Israeli Defense Forces.
And we've had these renewed warnings of the danger of starvation. The United Nations are warning that the entire population of Gaza is facing food insecurity, despite the fact that some Israeli officials have been insisting that, well, aid is getting in, which seems to fly in the face of everything we're hearing from humanitarian agencies and indeed from the United Nations itself.
Oh, Carol, the problem is that there is no truth coming out of Gaza from anybody, not from the Israelis, the Palestinians, the UN. Their aid agencies certainly have little credibility remaining on the world stage. It I don't know who we turn to other than that clearly there seems to be a consensus that what little food is getting in there is not going to be able to feed the innocents, and that those are the people we care about. Quite frankly, if 100 Hamas fighters died of starvation, I wouldn't shed a tear over it. But children and the innocents, that's something we all have to care about, and it's something that we're going to have to do better. They're going to have to do better at it.
And the United States, President Biden has been very directly warning Benjamin Netanyahu not to, for example, to go ahead and go into Rafah, where there are over 1 million people already sheltering. But the Israelis just seem to have stopped heeding those warnings, even from their closest ally, the United States.
Well, on a couple of levels, and you and I have addressed this here over the past months on a couple of occasions. First of all, Joe Biden has no credibility in the Middle East. He has none. He is completely irrelevant in the Arab world, and quite frankly, he's irrelevant to the Israelis, other than they have to do business with him. But I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu has the capability to go ahead and listen to Biden and do something along with Biden's suggestions. His suggestions make no sense. Israel has to solve this problem as best they can, and sadly, I firmly believe it's going to involve, unless the additional Arab governments somehow get involved in this thing to root out Hamas from Gaza. I think we're going to have to see, further bloodshed, great destruction, all here. We've been waiting now a month for this. It's been slowly progressing with the preparation, the discussions, but I think ultimately the Israelis are going to have to go in and do what they've said they're going to do.
What makes you say that President Biden has no credibility there?
Uh, the clear, my sense, my contacts over there, what I'm reading in the Arab media, President Biden he carries no bona fides with the Arab world. This is a man who has made these threats in the past. He worked in an administration under President Obama who did the famous red line in Syria over the chemical weapons use, and then utterly folded, failed. Uh, my Arab friends called Obama a coward, and they see Obama and the Biden administration is being that they're linked together. He has done nothing. He has not stood up and done anything in terms of a vigorous, solid foreign policy. This is make believe done on. Let's get Anthony Blinken on a plane and let's get him over there for the sixth time, and in a couple weeks I'll send him back over for the seventh time, and that's the extent of it. there's no power behind all these comments that are coming out of the White House.
Colonel Brendan Kearney, military affairs analyst, former chief of staff for the US Marine Corps forces in Europe. Really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, Carol, take care. Talk soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.